Aku tak nak debate, please. You're already here. I hope so that I'll get this call.
Everybody here?
Yeah.
Hello everybody, welcome to the last preliminary round of Penang Debating Championship. I'm Chair, I'm John, representing with me is Sarah. In opening government, we have Hara. In opposition, we have Hara. In closing government, we have Senza. And closing opposition, we have Yish and Yed.
Which is definitely not you. Definitely not.
Without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister. Here.
Honorable Chair, we think it is unfair that only a specific half of society must bear the weight of childbearing. That these women go through months and months of torture, of agonizing pain, and having to go through every single aspect of motherhood and only be defined by their ability to procreate. We believe on-site opening government that natalism in of itself, that natalism in of itself is immoral. We are anti-natalists, that we think that this is a strategic step for the feminist movement to achieve true equality. What do we want on us of the house? We will campaign this by having creative campaigns, protests, ads, education, the whole works. We want to ensure that everyone understands why we fight for anti-natalism. We'll also be okay with helping funding with abortion and contraception so that people have all access to ensure that they don't procreate. We're also okay to do this as a tool to argue for women's equality and for women's rights. Even if we want to take the most extreme end, we're fine with doing this to a point where we will only stop the moment we achieve some form of women's equality, or until we have a machine that makes sure that men will have 10 children too, whichever we get first. So I'll bring you three argumentation. Firstly, why exactly procreation is immoral within the current context. Second, why exactly feminism is important, because women are the epitome of womanhood, because procreation is considered as the epitome of womanhood. And thirdly, why exactly everything people would just leave, and why exactly this will still be an important access to a scripted discourse and for feminism in general. So moving on to my first argumentation, 2 points of analysis. We tell you that procreation in of itself is immoral. Why so? Because people do not consent to being born, that you do not consent to being put into this world, being consented and being subject to things like birth lottery, the discrimination that comes afterwards, being subjected and differentiated into certain races, certain religions, certain statehood, and certain genders that you do not define, that you do not belong to. Everything, therefore, it is an unfair burden to be put on a person who do not have access to what exactly they want to live for. We think it is unfair for you to, it is immoral for you to force a person to go through a life that they did not choose. And because you cannot get that consent from them, therefore it is morally right for you to stop procreation in general. Second level of analysis, we tell you that birthing into this current world is birthing into life that's only of suffering. What does that look like? It looks like being born into a world where you have extremely racist rhetorics within politics, extreme diseases, whereby millions of people are dying like the Ebola crisis in Africa. But even if that doesn't happen to you, what exists for everyone is a huge actual danger of things like climate change that's untenable and has no ability to be reversed. This means the fact that the temperature within the world has risen by 2 Celsius, which has led to increasing tides, ruining the ecosystem, the ability for people to gain some value of a life. They're ruining the ability and giving more power to tsunamis and typhoons. The fact remains that because of rising ocean currents, you have no longer access to greater resources like food, like seafood, or just basic control of water, because these things will no longer exist. Before we move on to the third level analysis, I just thought that up. Sure.
why don't the families care for unborn babies?
Yeah, later. So thirdly, we tell you that this also means that when you tell people that procreation is immoral, like of course some people won't actually follow that. But what that means is it also forces people to look for people who are adopted, for example. We tell you that at least all around the house, we give more incentive and more urgency for adoption centers and foster care. We tell you that you should focus more on adopting and taking care of children of others or taking care of minorities rather than for your own children. So moving on, and this will deal directly with the QI. Why exactly feminism? Why feminism should do this? We tell you that it's because that pregnancy pregnancy and procreation is considered to be the epitome of being a woman. And I think it's unfair that women should be correlated only for them to be seen as baby factories. We have societies whereby women are being told to always take care and have 5-6 children on their own, while their man only needs to do the deed for like 3 minutes and then done. They don't have to care about 9 months anymore. They don't have to go through all the harms that these women have to go through. They don't, and we want a push to move away from that. We want to remind people that women should be put on a similar level. That men are not that because men are not valued as for their ability to have children, that women should be valued for the same. That women should not have other contributions to be put less on the spotlight just because they are pregnant. We tell you that this is a principle clear. Second level, we tell you that women have to bear the cost of pregnancy anyway. That it's unfair that they have to go through all the torture and the amount of suffering that they have to go through. But it's not just that 9 months. It's also the ability for them to lose their jobs because they can't get maternity leave. It's also the justification that was given towards them, that because they were pregnant, then that's a justification for them to be getting less paid because they have less value to the company. Justifications for them not to go to school because all they do is have kids in the house. We tell you that the comparative then is on us in the house. It's the ability for you to get a better life the moment you stay at work. It also looks like the ability for you to be able to uplift yourselves and not be seen wholly on your ability to have children. Third argumentation, why exactly does this mean for the discourse and the idea of women within society? We tell you that firstly, we don't think people believe. We think that there are still multiple issues within feminism that people will still fight for. Things like equal rights, things like equal pay, for example, that women will still hold some people and allies will still hold some value of interest within feminism, therefore they can still benefit from that critical support. They can still keep these people within feminism because there are still other aspects of feminism that they care about. Secondly, we tell you that feminism has a duty because they have always been the flag bearers of discussion. They have brought about the fight for women's rights. They brought about the fight for suffrage, for the ability of universal suffrage. They brought about the rights for women to gain access to education, for women to gain access to birth control and better healthcare and better education. We tell you that the moment we open up this discussion, when we start to campaign, this discussion stays within the media cycle, and that means it continues to stay within the national cycle. Because the moment you start discussing, the moment you start campaigning, you will bring you to interviews, bring you to discussions. Why do you want to do this? This will then keep and stay within the national idea and the national cycle of the media, and therefore stay in the thoughts of the people. Inside the school, this discussion never happens. This discussion inside the school only exists in academia, in the ideas and the classes of philosophy 101, which is inaccessible and cannot be brought about to popular culture. So therefore, we believe it is the duty of the feminist movement to ensure that this idea and this fight will always be brought to them for the rights of all women worldwide, proud to propose.
Anti-feminism on speech. Next up, I invite the leader of opposition to open the case for opposition. Here.
I can't find my app. And oh, thank you. Right. Panel, the feminist movement is centered around rectifying gender equality and to give protection to women who are not protected under the law. There are literally people and women who are suffering through not getting things such as your maternity leave or things such as ability for them to have access to education that the feminist movements are literally fighting for right now. We think that all of this should be protected above everything else and above suddenly actively campaigning for anti-natalism that we don't think comes to a tangible benefit in the end of the day. I think Azim made a huge mistake with starting his speech by explaining to us why is it that anti-natalism is good or it should be preached, but not telling us necessarily why is it the duty of feminist movement in of itself to propagate a sort of sentiment to the people and to have that in their fight in the end of the day. And I think it's also disingenuous for him to characterize women as only having sort of birth from only birth giving in the end of the day, because maybe that was true like I don't know how many centuries ago, but if you look at status quo right now, women get sort of empowerment from climbing up their social ladders per se, from being able to access like jobs or to be able to get a sort of elevation through society, and we think that that is good. So let's look at the things that Azim told you, right? I think it's these things such as the ability for only women to only have the epitome of being a woman only if they give birth. We think that this is untrue, right? Because in status quo, you have a lot of progressive women who don't really opt into giving birth in the first instance. It means that they already have sort of prioritization in which they know that they need to get better education or to get elevation in their economic status in order for them to care for their particular children in the end of the day. But we think that even if it's true that this there's a subset of women who only have empowerment through being a mother, we think that that's good, because we think that if the only avenue for them to feel empowered from having children, and if that gives them happiness, and if that gives them a sort of purpose in life for them to continue on, we don't think that is particularly harmful, or we didn't hear an analysis as to why is it that it's particularly harmful inside government in the end of the day. So a few things that I'll be talking about, and a lot of my rebuttals will be integrated as well. We will firstly be the first thing to explain to you what is the principal basis of feminism and why is it that anti-natalism ultimately don't have or dissect the sort of interaction you have within the movement in of itself. We think that number one, the principal basis of feminism is a few things, right? So firstly, how you need to have a gender empowerment, and secondly, how you need to have bodily autonomy in order for you to exercise your choices in the end of the day. How does anti-natalism clash with this principal basis of feminism? Because understand that anti-natalism heavily relies on the rhetoric that procreating is bad. And this literally delegitimizes the choices of mothers who opt into wanting to have children. And these are the sort of people who need protection from feminist movement in order for them to get perhaps a better maternity leave, in order for them to get maybe more insurance premium for them to have better good experience in your hospitals per se. We think that when you incorporate anti-natalism within your feminist movement, it allows for a shift of blame to happen, because now instead of actively like curbing the problem of the women giving birth or the problem circulating it, you would just blame the mother for giving birth, and we don't think that that's a particularly good stance for feminist movement to take. Sit down. The outcome of this is simple, right? It means that there's two stakeholders to this. So those individuals who have opted into procreation and who heavily relies on feminist movement in order for them to get better laws, in order for them to protect their children, number one, they're unable to speak about their problems of their marriages or their birth per se, because your feminist movement will always just say it was your problem in the first place because you had that baby in the first place, and that was like immoral for you to do. It means that they would not likely want to handle the sort of problems that circulates around the birth of that particular mother as well. And you are literally the one to be blamed in the situation, as opposed to you seeking out for solutions of that particular problem. And we think that that is harmful. But before I move on to the outcome of why is it that it would affect people who haven't opted into feminist movement, sure.
The justification for women having less pay and no education is because that their role is only harm the moment they have children. That is justification that people use. How do you argue that with the narratives that women should have kids?
We don't think that the narrative right now is that women should have kids, but the narrative that exists right now is whether or not the choice that you make empowers you. And we think that if the choice of them having kids empowers them in the end of the day and allows for them to seek into avenue like your feminist movement, for them to get protection of that particular choice that they make, we're okay with it. You need to tell us how is it that incorporating anti-natalism in your feminist movement would allow or suddenly eradicate all of these problems that you so want to push to us in the end. So let's look at like an tangible outcome of what we think the feminist movement should prioritize on. We think that anti-natalism attacks people's intrinsic kind of desires in the end of the day, because it's unappealing to tell someone to not have children, because if it means that they already have the desire to want to have a family per se. So it means that if your feminist movement heavily incorporates this sentiment into their campaigns, you disincentivize individuals from opting in because it doesn't coincide with their own interests, or doesn't coincide with their own choices or their own principles in life. We think that this will disincentivize people from joining into your fight to those who don't who are not in your feminist movement in the end of the day. And we think that being able to incorporate or being able to be more appealing or palatable to people is important, because the feminist movement cannot only run in of itself. It needs other majority people, not just like your liberals per se, but also you need to also be able to attract your moderates in the end of the day for that fight to be materialized in the end. We think that if you inflict a bad kind of idea into individuals, you are likely for them to not join in your fight, or it's likely for them to be disincentivized to want to continue the things that you're doing or the things that the feminist movements are doing. Because if you want to fight for this particular feminist movement to be able to have like tangible changes for the people on the ground, then they must keep their reputation and they must keep the value of feminism in the end of the day. And we don't think that anti-natalism in the end shows or portrays the sort of values that feminism has. A side government literally has to defend a world where your feminist movement would prioritize actively campaigning towards anti-natalism and actively secluding people who have made the choice to procreate and who have, by that choice, maybe had the sort of struggles that they need to rectify. Why is it that it's justified for you to leave them?
That's the leader of opposition, stop and find the empty.
Yes. Actively campaigning does not mean you only campaign for one thing, Mr. Speaker. And we don't necessarily need to say that we need to actively exclude people and push everyone away from this movement because of that one particular situation. Realize feminists also exist in the spectrum, and a lot of people enter feminism or relate them to the feminist movement because of a lot of different issues at the end of the day. You don't necessarily become feminist because you're pro-choice or because you're wanting more wage or minimum wage in this particular instance. It's more of an inclusive factor of how you see women should be treated and certain issues. So it may be a mix of match of what it is, but it's not necessarily only one determined silver bullet that makes you not a feminist at the end of the day. The best example is that all things that the policy that they come out are also on different stance, leading to different direction, on different stance and different road that they take. But a lot of things also leads to the equal treatment of women, or perception of women should be treated equally at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker. To that end, let's answer one of the questions, because they come and tell you that you can't include everything in feminist movement, and then because it will be counterproductive. Realize that we never say that we want to name and shame people, or we want to exclude people or push away a lot of things or the current status quo that's going to happen. That can also exist because feminists already fights on a lot of fronts. This only adds on another material of you saying that you can campaign, or things that you can actually say that you can gain happiness even without a woman, because that perception still exists even under status quo. They can come out and tell you that women are climbing out the social ladder, but look at one of the big news that happens to Beyonce and Serena Williams, even when they come out, is that, oh, they have given birth, oh, they're going to have twins in this particular instance, and not necessarily acknowledging a lot of things that they have done before. Even when Serena Williams backlash is because, oh, because she became a mother, she becomes more emotional in this particular situation. Company sees you as a liability because a lot of law protects you or push you into certain conditions that women should take. That's why they give you women like lesser wage, or that's why they give you different treatment compared to men. That is because the perception is there that once you have the woman or once you achieve certain amount of happiness, society deems you to have children in this particular instance, that everything comes after that changes from being treated you as a particular person to as a mother that needs special treatment at that point in time. We say the perception that you yourself needs to procreate and needs to achieve that happiness needs to be removed in this particular situation, and it's also a valid stance that feminist movement needs to make, because there's also a perception that happens in society that women constantly be seen that they need to bring up children or have children to be successful in terms of how or where they live at this point and time. Let's move on to what I'm going to tell you in today's debate in terms of the burden that women actually takes up in terms of how they move forward and engage a lot of things that they want to talk about, because it's not necessarily just about making certain policy, because even under their best case scenario, women already fight on a lot of fronts. But what is the burden that women already takes or should be taking in this particular situation? I already told you that situation like Serena Williams or Beyonce recently, they're always being perceived that they have women or they have family, and there's the kind of perception on the narrative that they shape. There's a lot of things that they move on forward after that, irrespective of their job or their wealth. The perception of these women always being perceived by certain condition that they go on. This creates a perception that the procreation is the only thing that comes out, and also shapes a lot of perception, even policy that they want to have in society at the end of the day. That is the end goal of women, and that is the thing that is inevitable, that you need to have maternity leave for these women, and that's why you inevitably needs to create a situation where there will always be clauses for women to leave work, for instance, or to have some kind of stop in the particular situation. Because in the perception of a lot of people, even in the law, is that whatever happens in society, at one point in time, this woman needs to go out on maternity leave. This woman needs to get lesser pay because they won't be contributing in their job. This woman needs to have all of this special treatment at that point in time. This is an inevitable outcome, even under perception of the law. That is the burden that women needs to take, or the women to take up. Even the best women under their side that climbs out that social ladder needs to constantly fight against this burden at the point in time and receiving lesser treatment or lesser pay, because they keep on counting down the clock, saying that when is this time going to come? When is the point in time this women would need to ask for maternity leave? When is the time point in time that these are all these preconditions that I think that women will need to achieve, will need to be given towards this women at this point in time? What is the comparative under our side? Before that, sure.
Like, does this mean the whole idea of women not being able to make a choice is because a lot of conservative people tell them that they have to procreate?
It's not that women cannot make a choice. They still can make a choice. But the treatment of the surrounding society is that whatever choice that you make at one point in time will lead to this particular outcome, that you will procreate and create children. So irrespective of whatever choice that you make of freedom or your expression that's being given, is the fact that your treatment of the people surrounding you, the treatment of the law, the treatment of society, the treatment of the men surrounding you, is that is the inevitable outcome, or that is the thing that we'll achieve at the end of the day. We need to break down the perception that women are only baby makers, and that it's not inevitable that they need to create that point in time. That whatever choices that they make, they don't necessarily need to lead to a point that they will need to get the wealth so that they can create a better environment for their family, for instance. They need to make sure that they climb out the social ladder so that they can create a better family or create a better society for the family, for instance. So the choices that they make should not be preconceived the point in time that they only do all of this to make a better family or to make sure that their children will have a better life in this particular situation. The comparative under your side is just what I explained, is that in current situation, it's not necessarily just about what the woman feels in the choice that they make. It's also about how society perceives the choices that these women make and how society would treat these women in terms of the choices that they make at this point in time. Natalism will mean that society will bit by bit and through natural progress will stop thinking that making babies is not an inevitable choice for the women and start treating these women as also a contributing part of society, that they don't need to make sure that countdown clock exists. Under your side, irrespective of how many freedom of choice that you have or expression that you make, people will continuously treat women differently because they always see that this is an inevitable outcome that the women will have, that they will always need to receive special treatment because at the one point in time that you will be given a situation that you want to create a family to achieve your happiness, and we will celebrate for you to create your happiness because you make good choices so to ensure that you bring up your baby in a better family compared to making a bad choice that you make your family to create the baby when you're still young at the end of the day.
The speech, I read the definition of opposition.
Opening government can rant all they want about why is it that a person shouldn't be your mother, but unless opening government tells us or analyzes to us what you can do to protect women who are already mothers right now, then all their rant doesn't matter in this debate at all. That's why you should believe that feminist movement should be able to prioritize and strategize how is it that they can protect females who have already exist right now versus the person who may or not exist in the future later. Because people who exist right now are the ones who are going to be actively harmed right now, and they are the ones who are going to feel the consequences of you being able to be a mother or not at this moment in time, right? So this debate is not just about whether or not you should be a mother, but also about the net benefit for women and mothers who have already exist out there and what we can do to protect them as well. If they want to talk about equality, then I think it's pretty weird for opening government to come up here and say that they seem to exclude females who are already mothers in the world right now. They are the ones who are being unfair because they assume that now everybody don't have to be mothers at the end of the day. Which is why precisely that feminist movements need to be strategic as well in what they fight for. The ability for you to campaign and forward your causes is one is extremely limited as well. You have limited resources. The support is very limited, and support that you get or the airtime that you get is very limited as well. Which is why that you need to strategize what you can fight for in order for you to have the most effective as well as meaningful change and protection that you can guarantee for women. That's what feminist movement should do at this point in time. Now, I think that if you have a feminist movement that actively campaigns for what this means is that you delegitimize the existence of women who have already become mothers in the first place. Because the rhetoric that they told you was one is extremely sexist and misogynist, right? The rhetoric literally tells you that all the problems in the world is because of women. Like, how could you possibly say something so cruel like that? What does it tell you? That means that you make women now be expected to solve all the problems in the world by themselves. You shift the blame game to women because now men are able to say that the reason why all the problems in the world happen is because of women who want to become mothers in the first place. I think that's a very unfair rhetoric that they have to that they rely on. So at the point when you expect women to solve themselves, that means that that is less likely that they can solve things themselves, given that there are also structural as well as institutional barriers that they have to break through in order for them to be able to say that it's not my fault that I became a mother. What does this mean? It means that you isolate females in a world where, in that world, because any bad outcomes will always be shifted towards women at the end of the day. And that's pretty damn sexist, right? Because imagine if, let's just imagine, right? That if you're the one being blamed for something wrong, and something that you didn't choose for, but it's wrong. That's particularly vindictive cycle that you put females in. And even yourself, if people blame you for something wrong that's happened. This means that at the point where you isolate them, and this is particularly harmful, right? At the point you isolate them, you make females become less comfortable to talk about the problems that are related to maternity or related to females in the end of the day. No thanks. And it's unfair for women as well, but there's no attempt from opening government to tell us how can they also protect females who are already become mothers or females in general right now. At the point where feminist movement is seen is advocating for you shouldn't be a mother, that's when the feminist movement looks less credible. They look less reliable. Therefore, the support system that feminist movement want right now becomes even less reliable because now females don't know who can they turn to when the feminist movement are the ones who are supposed to do it on the first place. No thanks. Look, then this means that females or like mothers, at the point where you isolate them, then feel less comfortable to want to talk about things like the discrimination that they face once they become mother. Things like if you're pregnant or if you are female with children, it's less likely for you to be hired in a company because you are now seen as unproductive for the company, or that females should stay at home because that's what they should do as well. So it's really harmful if they don't feel comfortable talking to this. To talk about this to the public, because eventually, and the reason why they feel uncomfortable, because eventually everything that all their concerns that they address will be weaponized back against them, and they are unable to get out of that cycle in the very first place. And because you cannot rely on feminist movement, that's when you make your fight for your protection for women are all harder as well. No thanks. What does it mean? It's likely that you're going to regress all the progress that feminist movements have far advocated for at the end of the day. Things like abortion clinics, or things like maternity leave, things like pay wage things like pay for women, for example. All this becomes more possible when you give more reasons for your sexist, misogynist individuals to weaponize your life literally against you at the end of the day. It's harmful for political discussion as well, because at the point where people can weaponize that against you, that feminist movement, and plus the fact that feminist movement say they shouldn't do it as well, then it's very easy for men to escape. It's easier for you to scapegoat the discussion by saying, oh, the reason why you're in trouble is because yourself anyway, so why should I bother helping you at the end of the day? That means that the woman's fight becomes far less effective because the blame game continues at the end of the day. Let's talk about,
So, feminism movement is a spectrum of bodies that are based on standards of equality and support of other groups. One campaign means that we just make men and just as one.
Even if it's not true, right? I think that's something called exist for women who become mothers as well. That means that all kinds of public opposition from opening government now become not mutually exclusive at all, because you still have females who are able to rely back on the support system that they have when they don't want to, when they become mothers. Let's talk about breaking perception as well. I think the discussion, so they say, oh, you are unable to break the perception about whether or not females should become mothers or not. But I think the perception is broken at the point where discussion already exists in social media, for example, already exists on ground, where people talk about why is it that some women are unable to become mothers or don't want to become mothers. You have scientific proofs that prove that sometimes females just medically can't become mothers as well. That means that at best we mitigate the concern about how females don't have children, the concerns from females who don't have children at the end of the day. But given that you still have women can share have shared experiences about their lives and their struggles that they go through, that means that you still have support group at the end of the day, or like a group of friends probably, right, who are able to still console you because you can't become mother or because you don't have to become mother at the end of the day. That means that all the harms of opening government can only materialize if they are able to tell you that that females who don't become mothers, for example, can't access all these support groups in the first place. That's why you should advocate for anti-natalism. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's a little bit further here? Yeah, perfectly. Woo, Shamini!
Right. I'm going to bring to you 3 extensions today. I'm going to give you a principle as to why specifically the feminist movement ought to propagate for anti-natalism because it's a rational choice for women. I'm secondly going to give you a characterization of what active campaigning actually looks like. And thirdly, I'm going to talk to you about how we actually change things on the ground. Before that, I want to revive the problem because I think OO is incredibly glib when they talk about how we currently already have the choice to not have children. That might be true for the most privileged sectors of society, but to a large extent, the rest of society still privileges the idea of legacy. They still propagate a narrative that motherhood is beautiful, that you ought to appreciate the moments in which you are a mother because that is something that women were born to do. And also, in general, people think that it's the most natural thing in the world because it is required for the continuity of the human race. These are structural reasons as to why it would be impossible in the absence of a countervailing force for women to be able to ever fight against a narrative that predominantly tells them that they ought to be mothers as opposed to having the choice not to. If you take a look at Asian societies or in general women who choose not to have children, a large majority of them are seen to be or said to be similar to men or having lost their womanhood as a result of their choices. So what exactly is the principle that we stand for in this debate? I agree with everything the opening government says. I'm happy to defend the fact that we probably should not unconsensually bring people into the world. But specifically from the viewpoint of the feminist movement, we ought to care about women making rational choices. And childbirth is an incredibly irrational choice. You have a tumor that grows within you. It is a parasite that will be in your body for 9 months, restricting your movement, making you have hormonal changes. It is a legal liability after it is born. You also run the risk of death as a result of preeclampsia. You also run the risk of, for example, things like postpartum depression and the like. Having a child makes no sense whatsoever for any rational human being because you are going to be bound to another offspring for the rest of your life, and it is very likely that the individual will not give you anything in return. And yet for women, they are told by society that they need to love this parasite or this tumor thing that they have birthed from their womb. That somehow, even if they break their heart, or even if they are a financial liability, this is a thing that is supposed to be precious to them. I think that the feminist movement ought to cut across the narrative that currently exists to tell women that the right choice is not to be a mother. And I think it's a principal obligation of a feminist movement that aims to liberate women from bad choices. But what is the specifics of this particular policy? And here I'm moving to my second extension. Firstly, I think that the biggest problem with the fact that motherhood is such a stupid thing is the fact that the way our society has evolved has made motherhood an incredibly irrational choice. So for instance, firstly, we have celebrated the idea that it is an obligation for women to do this. But also, we told them that their suffering is what makes them better mothers. But in addition to that, we as a society have literally progressed to the point in which technological advancement have made possible so many things in life. And yet at the same time, we have created very little support networks for most mothers in the world. So the fact that we're still fighting on things like maternity leave, the fact that we're still fighting to fight off the glass ceiling for women, the fact that we still don't have things like, for example, cures for things like postpartum depression, and we tell women to keep silent about these issues, means that society as a whole has not done enough and has covered up the fact that they have not done enough for women by telling women that their suffering is meant to be pleasurable. So what does the active campaign that is meant to be valuable? So what does the active campaigning look like? We think it looks like individuals telling women that you ought not have children until society corrects itself. It is them telling women, for example, that until the point in which you actually gain structures and certain kinds of acquiescence from your family, you ought not make this irrational decision. And even if you don't get, or even if you and if you choose at the end of the day not to do these things, then you ought to have that choice as well. So that active campaigning is distinct from everything that OO accuses us of being, because it's not a unilateral rejection of motherhood as a whole, but a rejection of motherhood in its current form that we are actually against. How exactly does this actually solve the problem in status quo? There are a few ways. Firstly, I think that on the most basic level, it allows for women to push back against the narratives that force them to become a mother. The response coming from OO was to say, but now there is no support for women who want to have children and they're going to be blamed for it. But it's patently untrue. The feminist movement literally stands against victim blaming as one of its core tenets. That's why even though a lot of feminists disagree, for example, the decision to wear a hijab, it is still supported and they are still considered to be an important constituent of the feminist movement. We don't think the feminist movement abandons individuals right away. The second thing they told us was about how it is a choice of certain women. But these conservative women already have safe spaces in which the rest of society allows for them to have their children. But thirdly, they said that now conservatives are going to hate the feminist movement. Again, I pointed out that that's unlikely to be true if you're just pointing out problems. What is the actual change on the ground? Firstly, I think the feminist movement is able to actually change narratives. So if you analyze the way the feminist movement works, it oftentimes is a huge amount of largesse. It's an international network and it has huge membership because it literally deals with half the population. This means they have access to things like media channels. They're able to create huge amounts of change in the way that society as a whole tends to look at motherhood. This means that at the very least, there's breathing space for individuals on the ground to make certain decisions that are better for themselves. But the second thing that we want to talk about is that to the extent to which we think only a certain sector of women may be convinced by this, we think it's still a good thing for a few reasons. Firstly, the fact that as long as more women are unwilling to have children, or at least as long as more women start to question in like the discourse, for example, why exactly society does not support this particular decision, we think that what happens in most societies is that there will be a push towards changing structures in a way that actually benefits these women so that we can incentivize them to have these children. Especially given that in many societies, in most progressive societies, the feminist movement is seen to be an arbiter or at least to be able to propose good things. And we think that the narrative of the way in which motherhood hurts women is one that's immensely relatable. The third way in which it helps women also is because of the narrative of motherhood that currently exists and the lack of a countervailing voice. Many problems that have to do with motherhood can never be solved because of the silence that shrouds women as a whole. So for instance, women are told not to talk about things like postpartum depression. They are not allowed to say things like, I regret having my child and wish I had gone to like climb up the corporate ladder instead, because these are things that are considered to be bad if you are a mother and takes away from your value as a woman. Saying that women ought to be able to have anti-natalism as an option therefore allows for women more breathing space to be able to actually talk about these issues, because it is now painted as something that is not an a priori absolute good, but rather one that has its cost attendant to them and ought to be calculated as such. The last thing we want to talk about is that in conservative societies, while we recognize that we may not be able to change the minds of all women, what this particular policy does is that I think that it creates the information reach that doesn't exist otherwise. So for instance, even in the smallest case of scenarios, we allow for women on the ground to be able to do things perhaps even in secret, like get birth control that allows them to stave off having children, or to like secretly against their husband's will, for example, not have those children because we tell them there is a legitimate choice that they should be allowed to have as well. We're happy to go.
If both sides agree that when it comes to a feminist movement, paternity leave and the ability of women to have a choice isn't in of itself a problem, then we think if it comes to a social ladder, the problem or the things that we need to solve isn't by actively campaigning anti-natalism, but rather campaigning against people who actually encourage the systematic oppression that goes against the choices that a woman can make. This means if you really want to fight about paternity leave or you want to talk about equal pay, it shouldn't come at the expense of the victim changing itself, but rather changing the people, the perpetrators who actually put a systematic oppression towards them, right? But for that, a few responses. I'll do two things, right? I'll tell you, number one, why it's important for us to change the systematic oppression in comparison to you conforming to a better way of how people materialize it even more. But secondly, I'll tell you why it's very hypocritical for the feminist movement to do this in and of itself. Firstly, few things coming from slide CG, right? Firstly, they talked about how there's subtle regions of things that make it immoral. Let's understand a few things, right? How the feminist movement works in the spectrum, which means it's intuitively it's possible for us to believe people who are more in tune to the corporate world, who actually have careers, are likely the people who don't want children, and are likely people who are able to understand the progressive nature of not having children. But the comparative is there's so many women within this middle range of people who chooses to have children. It doesn't have to be because of religion, but it's just the choices that they want to make. What does this mean, right? Because these spectrums exist, it's very unfair for us to tell them, oh, your choices wouldn't be good enough for you, or that your choices would be bad for you. Because what we're going to tell you inside closing up is that having a choice of you giving birth or procreation is a choice that is calculated risk, which means you can calculate the risk of you having a child that will mean that you need to use a lot of money, right? Or use more time into taking care of the child. I think these are calculated risks people can make, and these are the calculated risks of discussions that you should have in comparison to a world when these things don't even exist, right? We think the comparative here is people they see that this thing is harmful because it will people will put themselves into risk. There are a lot of choices that the feminist movement give in nature, like having an abortion is in of itself already a calculated risk, right? So whatever harms that she told you about women giving birth is similar to you taking an abortion to begin with, right? But secondly, how she talked about active campaign means you let a lot of people understand. I think this isn't fair. Because you can't have the best of both worlds. So you cannot have an active campaign, but at the same time, make people understand and collectivize other choices, right? The problem that exists in debate is because a lot of people don't understand maternity leave. Your world would rather rush away or move away from the issue and just make sure that those issues never come out, right? So what does this world look like in their world? Which means you're not solving issues or having discussions on maternity leave or whatever happens within the feminist movement, but you're just brushing it away because they don't exist. So if I feel that whatever discrimination an African American feels, then I think it's fine for me to ask African Americans to not procreate, because at least they don't go through all the birth lottery side opening government want to tell you. No, thank you. But I think this is something that both sides of government want to talk about, which is social ladder thing, right? We agree a social ladder is important, but a social ladder doesn't come at the expense of you trading the benefits that you need of as an individual. This means the social ladder that will come from side closing opposition would mean you actively condemning misogynistic men in your company for not giving you equal pay. This would mean you promoting more airtime, like you going to the Oscars or you going to the Grammys, promoting the ideas of the Me Too movement in comparison to you asking victims to probably change themselves, right? We think the common ground of discussion needs to come at the expense of you engaging with the people who actually harm you the most, which means systematic oppression doesn't come at the expense of you trading what you feel less benefited of, but rather really condemning the people who really makes you not have these benefits. No, thank you, right? So we agree that these are the issues. With the systematic oppression that exists in this world, isn't by you actively condemning these individuals to begin with, right? Few things, and I'll move on to my substantives. Number one, let's understand this one, right? The reason why most of the time that even if you are raped, an abortion, even when you are raped, and when it comes to the feminist movement, abortion might be your main choice. But isn't a choice even if you don't take abortion, doesn't mean you're making the wrong choices. What does this mean? It means when it comes to a feminist movement, it gives you the choices. But what's not okay in the feminist movement is you going against people who want to make that choice. Which means, when it comes to a feminist movement, they're not okay with the state banning abortion because you limit the chances of women making that choice. So we think when it comes to actively campaigning negative anti-natalism, which means you actively ask people or prohibit people from actually making those choices. We think whatever ideas that come from the state on how having a child is a problem is already coercive in nature. Which means when it comes to a feminist movement, we think it's very hypocritical for them when they say that abortion should be a choice, but we'll condemn people who ban it, but then at the same time tell people that if you have a child, it's not good for you because it's not good for you, right? We think it's very hypocritical in and of itself as a movement, because this will then fit whatever side opening opposition would tell you. Because that would mean more women who already have children will feel more marginalized and don't fit into the only safe space that they have to fight for them, right? But the second extension will tell you, and it's very different, right? How do we best solve this systematic oppression? Because we don't think you can act we think you're just brushing away the issues that come from activism. Yeah.
if the root of your systematic oppression is that women are believed to be mothered, why is the ability to question or saying that women should not only be mothered is a problem?
The problem that happens on your side is the ability for you to become a mother is no longer a choice or a calculated risk an individual is able to make, but rather it's a harm that a person shouldn't opt into in the first place, right? The comparative is that. But secondly, right, the other problem that exists is the whole systematic oppression I want to tell you, is that how do we best solve issues that comes to paternity leave or whatever both sides want to achieve, right? We don't think it comes with you actually asking people to stop giving birth, because this just means you just brush away the problems. This means if you really want companies to understand paternity leave, this would let's understand why people don't believe in paternity leave to begin with, right? It's because they feel that women are just taking a leeway when it comes to just giving birth to a child, because it's just a time that they need off because they have been given birth, right? Most of the time, the corporate incentive would mean that this is something that's being inefficient to them in the companies. These are the things a lot of people don't understand. People don't understand paternity leave because they feel like men are just taking the leeway to not work because their wives are giving birth or things like that, right? The only way for you to change this mentality isn't by you not giving birth and not having that problem to arise to begin with, but rather actually targeting people and actually having condemn the acts of these individuals making towards people who are victimized by not having these paternity leave, right? Within for every issue a feminist movement makes now will be jeopardized even more. So in a world where we ask women to correct themselves in order to get better representation, then we will live in a world where if you are raped, then you should correct yourself and not wear clothes that are revealing because you're raped. The world in which this side lives will encourage more victim blaming and degrade women even more. Very proud to oppose.
Try to remember from the shape and when they come with friend and go.
Close that and then move. No, you can close it because it's more consent. So and then move the mic. Just close it.